where they have lots of limestone caverns that they've dug out to save things, all of the things from civilization. They've been working on this for decades and decades. So you know that the power elite, actual people at the top know exactly the cycle. They know exactly what to expect. They know the side effects of it. They've managed this point in history, I think, before. But you got to remember, all the people around the time of the founding of our country were jacks of all trades, and not just, I wouldn't say jacks of all trades, but damn near genius of all trades. So they knew about writing, they knew about literature, they knew how to chop a tree down, how to weld it, they knew how to weld, they knew how to do everything it took to be self-sufficient because they had no other choice. They were on the dawn of invention, and you got to think about how far have we come from then, where there was no electricity and people were carving out a life for themselves, to now where everything that you can think of is somehow dependent on a major corporation or government. And we're at that point. You're right about the community, and you got to realize, whenever you scan through the news and you see all these articles directed at morphing the minds of a child, that you know that they go for the child because they know if they get the child, they have control of the mother. And if they have control of the mother, they have control of the men. And if you can stop at the basic unit, a family unit, you don't get a tribe, you don't get a community, you don't get a culture, you don't get a country. The bonds of society at the family level, you'll never have communities that can come together and exchange ideas, talents, and expertise in order to restart a society in a different way that's not under the control of the controllers, which I think they're going to leave us hanging is what's going to happen. In my opinion, here in the not too distant future, all of the powers that be are going to recede back into their little dark crevices and holes and let human beings completely unprepared and uneducated on the cycle that they're going to just deal with it. All is planned, and they're getting the leftover remnants of people used to the system that they want to implement when that's over. It's more than a sci-fi world. I mean, they are going to micromanage everything about your life, from your choices of food, the way you run and maintain your property, to when you can go outside, when you can grocery shop, or when you can get your food delivered, is what I think it's all going to come to that. Walmart and the other chains, you mark my words, within the next year will say that they're moving their internet ordering system and they're going to expand that into delivery to your home. So think about the private property aspects of always having people trying to have access to your private property. It's already bad enough whenever your property mingles with municipalities and utility companies. Now imagine every company and their brother all laying claim to right of way to get on your property to do this, that, or the other thing.
Well, I think the people that would be left over, coming in 2035, 2040, I mean, they would be masters of everything to be able to get through this. And I was reading a documentary, and they were talking about, in a bizarre, demented way, that society needs to have a reset sometimes because there's too much dead weight. And the way to do it is wipe out part of the people, and the strongest will survive and bring the race through. The human race itself, like all people as a race of humans, not apes or not insects, but us, to bring it through, because we're coming through this cosmic ray density. And apparently this is not the only rodeo that this has ever been done before. Apparently it's like the 34th or 35th time that we're going through this cycle. And the whole thing goes through that it's a managed planet. We're on a farmed planet. And sometimes for the next generation after the cosmic ray bombardment to adjust to the new world, the new Earth, if you will, that's being structured electrically, vibrationally, electromagnetically for what we have been stable at for, let's say, the last 500 years, 1,000 years, even since the last ice age, the exit out of the Younger Dryas. Okay, the vibrational frequency, the entire frequency field changed at that point. We were in an ice age. The frequency field changed when we exited the ice age. Because I'll come back to it again. You got to think about 90,000 years of stable climate on the planet. Now, everybody, they try to distract you with the Ice Age lexicon. Climate was stable for 90,000 years. Do you think humans would have found the sweet spot to grow food and set up cities and find the area that wasn't too cold, that still didn't get too cold in the winter? Of course they did, around the planet. After the ice sheets had grown to their maximum, The weather apparently was stable for 30,000 plus years after the full maximum glaciation. The only problem that started to set humans back was around 27 to 25,000 years ago, when it started to get a little bit warmer. So they were experiencing the same thing on the opposite end. And this is why we got a lot of those cave paintings and whatnot around that time, around 23 to 20,000, 17,000 years ago. They were going through a tumultuous change in climate as well. They were coming out of an ice age. So the climate started to destabilize then too. Because you imagine 30,000 years of stable climate, like what kind of societies had evolved at that point? You got to think, some of these legends and myths that people talk about, I hate to be so cliche about, like Atlantis and Lemuria and so, but, it has some real basis in fact that if you had a stable climate for that such a long period of time, you would have made vast, gigantic, unbelievable societies, way more than us. You got to think about it. Like our history starts, 5,000 years ago? Because our climate's been sort of stable since then, more stable. After the 4.2K event, it was stabilized since then. So let's say we had 4,000 years of stable climate now where we evolved to where we are now, 4,000 years. Our climate's been stable. We're going to go into an unstable climate. But if you had a society that was inner Earth, in realistic terms, almost every society on the planet talks about something from the inner Earth coming out to guide them, whether it's Quetzalcoatl or the ant people or whatever it is. And then once humanity reestablishes itself after agriculture is given back, mathematics is understood again, they just disappear until the next cycle. So if you were to leave us like we are now on the surface of the planet, who would survive after 15 or 20 more years as we go into this cosmic ray bombardment, the shift into, I really think we're going to a once in a 2,000 year event, the cracks in the earth, the mud flood and all this stuff. Who's going to survive after that and still be able to produce food, store food, create their own medicine, have their communities sussed out? At the end of that 15, 20 year period, I mean, we're going to be down to, 500 to 700 million people only on the planet. That'll be it. But those are the people, and that whole nefariousness is, philosophy book I was reading about brings us right back into, you need to reset to bring up and strengthen the humanity. It's like the genes coming through, the strongest of the strong get through these cycles. And it's not like, they're going to coddle everybody and bring you down and keep you in a base somewhere and keep you in a camp somewhere and coddle you and keep you because you're good, just because you're a person. They're like, it requires this, only the strongest move through the next phase of, and I mean, like I say, they were talking about the 35th, 37th iteration of this, like the next rodeo. It's not the first one. So these controllers off Earth, inner Earth, whatever, the controllers of farm planet Earth, this is what happens every so often. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it too. So I will be one of those coming through the backside.
I think you're right. And this is weird. On this subject of inner Earth, I actually have some firsthand knowledge about this. When I lived on Andrews Air Force Base, when I first moved there, they started a construction project. I believe it's on the southeast end of the base. But anyway, it's outside of where anybody or dependents or the public or anybody could get to. But I lived there for 4 years in a row. And during that time, they built a dirt mound the size of the Great Pyramids out there, which is only one conclusion that you can draw from that, is that they hollowed out a massive underground area that obviously they were building more or adding to or building a new subterranean bunker and system there. And this is in the already heavily catacombed area of the DC area. You got Annapolis, you got Bowling Air Force Base, you got the Andrews Air Force Base, which is the presidential base, and also it's a joint base, so it has Marines and Navy and Air Force there too. And then nearby you have all of the political things, like Washington DC. So the whole concept of our government, which is funny because I've been studying these catacomb maps now, and all of the places that ancient man wrote on the rocks about squatter man, about showing different slices of the torus field at different times, things like that, the centipedes, the ladders, the Pratt instabilities, all of these are painted in areas that have a history of newspapers that say they found giants there, and B, are also places of military digging underground. So it's almost like just a theory, but different forms of man have been traveling the same paths over and over again, every cycle, finding places to hide in the earth because their ancestry, their oral traditions, the painting on the rocks, ancient stories, all told them that they emerged from underneath the ground the last time the earth was wiped clean, or at least one of those times. So these oral traditions keep passing on, and it's very strange that some of the most powerful governments in the world, going back to, I would say 1933, if you know what I'm saying, went all around the world and investigated these subterranean stories, people that claim to have come from these lost lands like Lemuria and Atlantis. And they went to all these places, they dug up things, they accumulated knowledge. And then on top of that, you have these same militaries building massive amounts of subterranean bunkers. And then back over to around where you're at, where they have lots of limestone caverns that they've dug out to save things, all of the things from civilization. They've been working on this for decades and decades. So you know that the power elite, actual people at the top know exactly the cycle. They know exactly what to expect. They know the side effects of it. They've managed this point in history, I think, before. And what's really scary is the fact that we'll never know who's at the top of the pyramid because of the form of world government we have is so compartmentalized that even the people you recognize as being the top of the elite, I have a feeling, are on one of the bottom rungs of the pyramid.
Yeah, they'd be on the bottom rungs of their own top 1% of the pyramid up there. Because again, it comes back to that movie that I've seen that it hit home to me for some reason I felt was the truth. This movie, it was a sci-fi movie called Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah.
And I will absolutely, to this day, believe that they released the truth through a sci-fi film. That the rulers of this planet are not even on the planet, that they're from another, Jupiter was the largest planet. And again, if you look at Saturn through the myths across this planet, the Saturn worship, it seems like a lot of the occultists and a lot of this kind of what you're talking about, the 1% at the top of the pyramid, the 1/10 of 1%, they're all focused on Saturn. They're focused on Jupiter, but mainly Saturn. Maybe they were using Jupiter ascending, but truly that same society was on Saturn ascending. And they just want one planet over.
And what's bizarre about that is when you think about the history of our satellites that go out there. Wasn't it, I don't remember if it was Voyager 1 or Voyager 2, that right whenever it was going around Saturn, it just shut off and blacked out. And they couldn't get any information from around Saturn, supposedly, until it was like pretty far away, and then it resumed taking pictures of it and they fixed the glitch. I always thought that was pretty bizarre. But right when it was going by, it turned off. Like, if, maybe there was something there that we weren't supposed to see. And it seems like every time NASA discovers stuff, I've been joking for years about how come there's not a drone on there giving us high def footage. And then all of a sudden, supposedly they are. But I guarantee you're not going to get any interesting pictures back. What you're going to get is a slow dripped feed of hopes for disclosure, because I'm positive that's where we're going when the planet goes nuts. Is they're going to throw aliens in the mix to totally distract everyone, and it'll be a reason that you're supposed to follow them for protection and for guidance and for food and for safety, because they've already set up this bizarre system of interdependence on the food supply.
Yeah, if there's an alien invasion, that means the elite are heading underground, and that's the major distraction while they all disappear, because the event's truly inbound, whether it be a cometary bombardment, a comet tail with a plasma discharge across the planet, or we're coming into some sort of interplanetary lightning bolt discharge that created the Grand Canyon and the Adriatic Sea. Something like that is the point where they're disappearing and everybody else is left out here. When you kicked on the Voyager spacecraft there, it reminded me about two things. It connected that inner Earth thing with this. Because one, Voyager went out and it hit the bow shock here of where the termination point is from the magnetic field from the sun going out into interstellar space. It seems that the satellite got bogged down there and it could barely move through. It was like moving an inch a day to try to get through the medium between that interstellar space that really, I don't know, there was some kind of dense medium there where it could barely penetrate through. The same thing in Russia, the deepest hole ever drilled in the earth at 12.5 miles, I think is the depth. They hit the same thing where they could barely drill through it. It couldn't barely even drill through. They couldn't, and they had to stop drilling because they couldn't. It was like an inch a day there before they were, like regular oil wells making feet a day, tens of feet a day, 100 feet a day. And then suddenly they hit that point at like 12.5 miles under the earth where they could only do like an inch, half an inch a day. How much of the world is known except for what you're told by the gatekeepers of the Smithsonian Institute, the Vatican, Nova? It's a very tiny amount of institutions out there that dictate what the timelines are. And you see this again and again. Graham Hancock comes out with his book talking about fingerprints of the gods back in the day. This is the early 90s, before there was a lot of research going on with individuals. And as soon as he put that out there, no, that can't be true. We're the experts. You don't know anything. And sure enough, it turned out to be true. So this whole gatekeeping of knowledge as well is a hindrance to any movement forward for society, because when people start to find anomalies like these artifacts in the wrong layer of rock, for example, you can't discuss it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Pyramids of Bosnia, are they real? Are they not? Not sure. But why did they stop all the digs? Every single archaeological excavation there was stopped. Why? What did they not want them to find? And you find this over in Indonesia too. What's that? Gunung Padang. They used ground penetrating radar. They found a full layer under that would be at least 60,000 years old of a new temple city under there. And nope, all the archaeological discovery, got to stop the dig, can't have it. So anytime there are discoveries being found that will buck the timelines that we're fed and given right now, it is always stopped. And you know who's pushing the head with the spear of the tip on that is always the archaeological divisions of a country that stop the digs. And where do they all funnel back to? Oh, National Geographic and these types of institutions. And anytime something's found, it goes right into those same hands as well, and it's never shown to the public. So, what's being discovered, what's being hidden, it goes on and on. It goes deep, and I'm willing to go that deep because I think there's way more hidden history. And the reason I'm so into it right now is we're coming back to this precipice within the next 3 years of all these changes that have shaped everything you're talking about. In the next 3 years is when it in earnest begins.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. And let me tell you how possible it is. I'm not too much of a scientist, but my layman's
You are, man. You have some of the best research I've seen on the petroglyphs. You're amazing. Ransom Godwin, 420 TV Freedomist Films, and myself, David DuByne. We're coming to the end of the hour here. What do you think about all these changes that are happening? I would love to hear your opinions.